Doug, it is so awesome to sync up with you, and it couldn't be better timing.
Well, you know what? This has been such an exciting weekend. I mean, the experience of being in the New York City Marathon, and I was out in the lobby out there about an hour ago, and I was just blown away by the people in the queue. There were thousands of people in the queue,
right?
And there's thousands of people in here right now, so it's pretty amazing.
Hello, welcome, and welcome back to the Marnie on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Marnie Salop. Today's podcast was recorded at the New York City Marathon Expo 2024 with guest Doug Olberding, president and CEO of Pigworks, the event company that organizes the world-famous Flyingpigmarathon in Cincinnati. Big shout out to our partners at Ketone IQ and Cyfox Health. Now, on to our conversation.
Doug is with the Flying Pig Marathon in Cincinnati. If you haven't heard of this marathon, it's time to dial in. Doug, talk to me about the Flying Pig Marathon, the weekend, and all of this excitement in Cincinnati in this really cool B-side marathon.
Well, so the Flying Pig, so most people, if you think about a marathon, right? You got the New York Marathon, you got Chicago, you got Boston, you got Los Angeles. If we would have called that marathon the Cincinnati Marathon, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now because nobody would have come to our race, right?
Yeah.
So we really lean into the pig history of Cincinnati. Cincinnati in the 1800s was a pork processing capital in the United States, right? The United States, such as it was, smaller country then.
Right.
But pigs ran wild through the streets. They let them off the barges and, herd them up to the slaughterhouses. And so there were just pigs everywhere, and we got this name. It was they called us Pig City or Porkopolis. And we don't do the pigging anymore, but we lean into our history. And so when we were thinking about the marathon, and we were thinking about a name, and people were saying, what about the Cincinnati Marathon? Or what about the Seven Hills Marathon? And then somebody said, what about the Flying Pig Marathon? And it was like, yes, yeah, the Flying Pig Marathon. So I'm sitting over at the booth, and people just walk by and they look at it and they say, what's the Flying Pig Marathon? We don't have to do anything. They walk right up to our booth and start asking us. So we're engaging with customers. It's really been nice.
So so how long has the marathon been going on?
So this is we're going into our 27th year. We've expanded. So we were just a marathon in the very beginning, but we have changed. Our organization is now called Pigworks because the pig works. It works really hard.
Right.
And we have events that go all around the calendar year. So on Flying Pig Marathon weekend, it's a 1 mile, it's 5K, it's a 10K. We have a relay. We have a race for your dog. Your dog can come and run a race.
I love that.
We have a little kids race.
Do you have like pet food sponsors?
Yes, we do.
Of course.
Yes,
You're so ahead of the curve.
Yes, we do. Yeah, so it's been, the marathon's been really wonderful, and we've just really allowed it to grow. We really play with the theme of the pig. I'm walking around here. There's no other marathon whose color scheme is pink, right?
I know, right.
So right there, you stand out. You're pink.
And I think also what's really cool is that, how many people, I think what's cool is that it's not as mainstream as, say, the major marathons. Mm-hmm. And I think that's nice because not everybody wants to do a marathon that's like 50,000 people.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, so what's really cool about the Flying Pig, and this goes back to the founding of the marathon, and I credit our founder for this. He tells the story, he was at a race conference in Portland, Oregon, and all of the race directors, this is 1997, and all the race directors were trying to figure out how they were going to cover the budget for appearance fees and elite athletes and everything like that. And he walked away and said, why are we giving money to elite athletes? Why don't we take that money and pour it back into the event experience for the runners who are actually paying our bills? So we create an experiential event that rewards the emotions of the first place finisher and the last place finisher and everybody in between.
So how many people do you have at your event, like just for the marathon, let's say?
Okay, so the entire event that weekend is 40,000. The marathon is about 6,000. The half marathon is about 14,000, and the rest scattered amongst our other events.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you're like the New York Roadrunners of Cincinnati. In a way, I mean, you're like the running race event company that organizes many of the running events in Cincinnati in that area?
So we are a nonprofit organization.
Thank you.
And yes, that's great. Yeah, no, we're a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3. We've been that way our entire lives. And we view ourselves as sort of the center of the running ecosystem in our region. And so that ecosystem is all of the events, all of the businesses, the sponsors, the running shops, the running clubs, everybody that supports running and fitness in Cincinnati. So we want to be connected to everything, whether we're putting on the race or not.
Right.
So we have, of course, our events, which go all around the calendar. We just finished our fall event season last weekend.
Right.
And we're gearing up for what's going to happen in the spring. But we also have a youth program like the New York City Marathon.
Right.
We have a youth program. We have a charity program. We have a program for runners with disabilities. And so we have a scholarship program that gives, last year we gave away $20,000 scholarships to 14 men, 14 women for high school seniors who are going on to college.
That's
next year.
so awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so, are you a runner?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so talk to me about your running.
Well,
how did you get into this?
Well, I told you earlier I'm a musician. So I've
Yes.
been a runner as long as I've been a musician. So
Okay.
Since the 5th grade is when I started playing guitar and when I started running. And so I say today, yes, I'm a runner, not as fast, not as far, not as long, and not as pretty. But I'm still out 2 or 3 days a week. I started in grade school on my grade school track team. And then when I got into high school, I think every kid my age thought they were going to be a basketball or baseball star. And I was sitting in the classroom my very first day of school, and the cross country coach came in and said, you know, this is cross country. I didn't know what it was. And he said, if you're thinking about getting into shape for basketball, this would be a great way to do it. I think he just wanted the runners. So I went out for the
That's
team.
how they broke you in, though.
Yeah, that's how they did
I know
it.
that's the feeder program.
Yeah, and so I went and I ran, and by the end of the year, I was the top runner on our freshman team. And then my sophomore year, I moved up to varsity, and I qualified for the states in cross country 3 years. I was a finalist in the mile and the 800 my senior year.
What was your time?
My fastest time was 4:16 in the mile.
Wow.
Yeah, 4:16 in the mile.
That's amazing.
My 800 was around 1:55, if memory serves.
That's amazing.
And so then when I finished my senior year, I was looking to run in college, and I ended up at Indiana University. So what was really cool about being here is, for the first time since 1982, I reconnected with one of my teammates, Jim Spivey, who was a multi-Olympian. You know, I think he was at 4 different Olympics, but he worked for ASICS. We just connected.
I think I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of a big deal. But anyway, I ran at Indiana, but I totally flamed out. By the October of my freshman year, I developed a stress fracture. Lots of frustration. I ended up transferring from Indiana after in the middle of my junior year. Finished up at Xavier University, where I ran my senior year there. And then after I graduated, I think I was fried on running. But it was about a year and a half later, I was at my job, sitting in my office, and there was this guy that every day he went out for lunch and went for a run. And I could see him leave from my office window, I could see him come back. And I started thinking, man, I should do that. And the guy that was in the office next to me was about 6'4", 250 pounds. And I think I had complained that I went up to 170. He goes, oh, yeah, when I first started working here, I weighed 170. I think the next day, I bought a pair of running shoes and I started running again.
Yeah, I would.
And so anyway, but then I got, in my post-collegiate, I had so much fun. I rediscovered the joy of it. You know, I loved running in events, and my family became involved in putting on events. So yeah.
So were you working in events when you're at your job? Like
Oh.
and then we're going to talk about guitar and music because
Okay.
I want to talk more about that. But yeah, were you working in events?
Oh,
or?
no.
Okay, what were
I
you
was
doing?
in politics.
Oh God. Okay,
Yeah.
we're not talking about politics.
No, we're
on
not
the
talking about
podcast.
politics. I worked.
We
I
are.
was. I worked. I staffed a committee of the Ohio House of Representatives. So
Okay.
I staffed the finance committee. That was as close as I got
Okay.
to politics.
Okay.
But anyway, so no, I didn't think about that. But I'm going to tell you a story, so I'm going to fast forward to 1994.
Okay.
Spring of '94. I had run the Boston Marathon. I qualified in '93. I ran it in '94. My family came up to watch me run Boston. My sister, who was 3 years younger than me, came up. She was on the first girls cross country team at her high school.
Wow.
She saw me run. Afterwards, she said, "Doug, I think I want to try a marathon." And I said, "Cool, I'm going to put a plan together for you." This is before we could email and there was no internet.
Right.
So I
You were,
literally
like, doing it in Excel.
No, I probably wrote it on my calendar,
Okay.
you know? And so I gave it to her, and we were sort of checking progress. And then it was May 21st of 1994. My wife and I were at home. It was a Sunday night, and our phone rang, and it was my dad. He said, we had those old tape
Right.
answering machines. And
Right.
he said, I could hear him say, "Doug, Julie, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone." We were in bed. And by the time I got out there, he had hung up. But then he called right back. And my sister was out on a training run, and she was attacked by a young man with a knife, and she was basically she was murdered right there on the street. And so my dad had called. He said, "Get up to Cincinnati, get to University Hospital." He didn't say what had happened, but we knew it was bad. We got in the car and we drove up, and by the time we got there, you know, the press, and she was 27 years old.
Oh
she
my
was beautiful.
God.
And it was in you know, the nicest neighborhood that you can imagine in Cincinnati.
God.
It wasn't like she was running in some bad neighborhood. And so as you can imagine, in a city, when something like that happens, it becomes, it dominated the news cycle. I mean, we
Right.
didn't have the internet and everything back then, but it was newspapers, television stations. The people at the hospital, there was a grief counselor, a social worker that just said, "You guys be prepared because this is going to..."
Crazy.
So I tell you that story because how I got into race administration was about a month after my sister had died. Some of us were together, and her friend said, "We need to remember Maria." We decided to start a race. She
That's so cool.
loved reggae music, so we called it the Reggae Run, and we had no idea what we were doing. We planned the race in 6 weeks. On the first weekend in October, 5,000 people showed up at our event. So what this became was this unique event in Cincinnati where people would come to this beautiful park near where she was murdered.
Right.
And we would celebrate her life with a reggae concert. We had food booths, so everything was free. We gave away everything. In the beginning, we gave away the beer, right?
Yeah.
It was free beer, but we got in trouble, so we had to start charging for the beer. But we had over 8,000 people come to this race. It
That's
became
amazing.
and we raised over $2 million for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So we brought Make-A-Wish to Cincinnati. It was a long answer. You say, how did I get
No,
into
but
race
that's such
administration?
an incredible story because it's a testament to the running community.
Yeah.
It's a testament to people like in our sport that like come together for these kinds of things. So
Yeah.
It's really great.
And so what happened in my life was after that happened, I was really involved in putting it together because I was the runner in the family. So, but my family, everybody, all my brothers and sisters, there's 6 of us, right? And then my cousins and extended family all got involved with this event. And it changed my life because I said life's too short. I was doing this financial administration, and so I decided just like that I was going to go back and get a PhD in this new field called sport management. And
That's
I
so
was
awesome.
and so I completely shifted my life after that. My wife did the same thing. She decided she's gonna get a PhD too. And so we both spent the rest of that time in Lexington working on our doctoral degree. I worked in a running shop. I coached
Lexington, Kentucky?
In Lexington, Kentucky, yes. At
Nice.
John's running shop. It's still there. It's John doesn't have it anymore, but it's still going strong. And I was the cross-country coach at Transylvania University.
So cool.
Yeah, and so my life totally changed. And I ended up getting back to Cincinnati because when I was finishing my dissertation, I looked at the Chronicle of Higher Education. That's where all the jobs were posted. And there was a job in sport management at Xavier University. And so I ended up getting back to Cincinnati, was hired at Xavier University in 1999. And so the rest, as they say, is sort of history.
That's incredible. That's such a great story. I love it. And so do a lot of people from around the area come to this race? Is it like how much of it is local and how much of it is now global with the global running group?
So with the Reggae Run, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
the Reggae Run, we were in a neighborhood park, not a city park, a neighborhood park. And it got so big, there was no place to park cars for 8,000 people.
Right.
So we stayed there as long as we could. On our 20th year, we had to move to a different park. And we had never had rain. It had been perfect weather every year for the Reggae Run. Even when there were hurricanes down in the Pacific, we never had any bad weather. The 20th year, we had to move everything to this other park. It didn't fit, the vibe wasn't there. And then on that day, it poured down rain. And I looked up at the back of the stage and did this huge picture of my sister Maria smiling at me, and I thought, it's time to stop doing it. We had 20 years, we had raised $2 million.
It was time to
It was
just
time.
call it.
It was time.
It's like a good TV show.
It was a good TV show. It could have been,
Like,
yeah.
meaning, like, you know, when it gets really good, like when they canceled Seinfeld, like everybody was so upset.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the best race ever, and it's so good, but it's like you have to end it at a certain point.
And so to this day, though, now it's 30 years. It was 30 years since my sister died this last May. And to this day, runners in Cincinnati, they know me because I'm with the Flyingpigmarathon, and I do the television broadcast of the Flyingpigmarathon for the last 10 years. So everyone knows who
So
I
you're
am.
natural.
And people come to me all the time and say, you got to bring the Reggae Run back. Gosh, do the Reggae Run.
You could just
again."
add it to that.
We've thought about it, but it's also respect for my sister
Right,
and
right.
my family. We feel like, I was just looking, so we're talking about music, I was just reading that everybody wants REM to get back together, and they will not get back together because they know they can't recreate the magic that they had in the 80s. And I don't
Right.
think that we could do the event that we did in today's world. It would
Right.
not work.
That makes sense.
It
I
would
mean,
not work.
it's a tough call with, like, it's a branding decision.
Yeah.
It's a big tough call. Almost better to leave it where it was than
Yeah.
to bring it back. I get that. So when your sister was murdered, was that one of the first, like, that we had heard of women to be, like, attacked and killed out on a run?
Well, it doesn't happen very often. I remember, back in the 70s, there were some attacks in Central Park,
Right.
I remember that jogger.
In New York City.
In New York City, but in Cincinnati, I mean, I think that's why it was so shocking because, first of all, she was running in a neighborhood that if you were going to pick a neighborhood to run in,
Right.
that was safe, this is the one you would
never
run
know.
in. And it just happened to be a kid who was having some very tough times, and he had just gotten in a fight with his mom and dad, and he just stormed out of the house. And
So it wasn't even about her.
no, it was not about her at all.
Wow.
It was not about her at all. And he was arrested right away. Somebody saw it happening and went over. And he said, put down the knife. And the kid just put down the knife and then just sat on the ground until the
Oh my
police got
God,
there.
that's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
I mean, we in New York City, like and everywhere in the world, like we talk about running safety and
Yeah.
women, and not just women, men too. Like you have to, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's just awful that you could be out doing something you love and be attacked by some person who's like crazy and.
But I feel,
Yeah.
my thing is, I think that, there is so much joy in movement. There's
Right.
so much joy in being physical and moving through your world. And even everything that happened to my sister, I'm conscious about it. My wife is, I make sure that if I'm running with my wife, that we're running together.
Right.
We're running together, and it's something that we enjoy doing together. I'm not working out when I'm running with my wife. I'm out there having fun.
Right. Right. So just like back to Flying Pig,
Right.
because I'm so excited to come do this.
Yeah.
First of all, it might be my first marathon my first marathon since 2019 at the
Okay.
rate I'm going.
Okay.
So that would be my second marathon ever.
Yeah.
What is the course like?
So the course is challenging. People will say, is it hilly? And I just say, yeah, it's hilly.
I'd like to know up front.
Okay.
That's good.
But
Yeah.
the great thing so there's wonderful things about the Flying Pig Marathon course. First of all, we designed it to be a beautiful course. So we don't want to take you through the industrial section just because there's no businesses over there and it's cheaper to do it. I mean, the cheapest thing for us to do would take a course and run it out on a bike path for 13 miles and turn around and bring it back. But that'd be a boring course. So we have a very beautiful course that goes through some of Cincinnati's most beautiful parks. You start in downtown and you loop into Kentucky.
Okay.
And then when you come back into Cincinnati at about mile 7, you start going uphill. So from mile 7 to about mile 9.5, you go up about 300 feet. After that, you're basically working your way downhill. It's downhill all the way to the finish line.
That's actually not bad. Honestly, that sounds like every Ironman 70.3 I ever do. It's like you do this like amazing flat bike and then they crush you on the hill.
Right.
And if you were mentally prepared for that hill, then you would be okay. But you're never mentally prepared because some people don't pay attention.
Right, right.
Like me.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's not a bad climb. It's a climb, it's a little bit of a climb, but it's good to pace. It's good for pacing.
And there's beautiful views along the way too. That's what's really kind of cool about it is, you get to this point, at the very highest point, you're on this bluff overlooking the Ohio River into Kentucky, and it's beautiful. It's in this little park, and we actually take you off of the road so you can go over this bluff and see, down into the valley and everything like that. It's pretty cool.
And it's also like a family weekend. Like you have other stuff going on for kids, and there's a 10K you said.
So we have 10 events that weekend.
Wow. Okay.
So it starts on Friday night. We have our 1 miler. So it is it's sponsored by 50 West, but we start waves of runners. Sort of like in 10-minute intervals. And then the last wave that we do is our elite race. They're local elites, but that's the only event that we do where we give prize money is that race. But it finishes right into our party. We have a big party there that's sponsored by one of the breweries. Then on Saturday, we have a 10K, we have a 5K, we have something called Pig Abilities. It's our event for people with developmental and physical disabilities. We have a dog race, right? So you bring your dog and you run with your dog. It's 2 miles.
That's awesome. I don't know. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we have this other thing. We call it our incremental marathon program, and we run it out of the schools. But the kids sign up for it, and they complete a marathon over the course of the semester. And then when they've got 25 miles. When they get to Saturday at the Flying Pig Marathon, they run their 26th mile, and they get to finish at our marathon finish line. So we'll have 5,000.
I've never heard of anyone doing that kind of stuff. That's really innovative.
And it goes with an education program too. So we find advocates in the school, and we have nutrition and everything like that. So it's more than just that race. It's something that, and we look at it as like we're growing the next generation of runners when we do that.
That's amazing. And so, where is this music? Are you still playing guitar?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have like 3 guitars hanging on my wall. I never play ever because I lost interest in music. Like I loved the classics. I love to play like blues.
Yes.
I don't know. So what about you?
So I've moved through every genre imaginable in the years that I've been playing. Right now, the current project that I'm involved with is it's a friend of mine that I met in high school, our sophomore year. And over the years, we have been in a bunch of different bands together. I've always just played guitar. He's played every other instrument, so drums and keyboards and everything like that. So now he's playing a stand-up bass. So the name of the band is Liz and the Perfectly Adequate Trio. So we are the Perfectly Adequate Trio, and Liz is the show. And so we do a lot of, so if you go on YouTube and you see Pamplemousse or some of those bands that reinterpret jazz classics or even pop songs into jazz classics. We do some of that right now. Every year we make it a goal to write an original Christmas song, and we also make it a goal to submit a song to the NPR Tiny Desk Concert.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's our original output that we try to do.
Okay, so how many guitars do you have?
I just got another one. So.
Oh wait, which one?
I got a 2011 Rickenbacker 620 12 string. It's an electric 12 string. I've wanted an electric 12 string forever.
That's nice.
I can show you a picture of it.
You'll have to say, yeah.
But I have, so I think I'm gonna, I probably have 11 or 12 guitars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you hang them on your wall, or you have
No,
them all just like
I,
laying around?
I turned a room in our basement into a recording studio. So that's where we record all our songs. And I have a place in the back for all of the cases, and the ones that I'm using I keep out on stands and everything like that.
Nice,
so, yeah.
nice.
The guitar that I play the most right now is a German guitar. It's called a Duesenberg. I saw.
Does it look like a banjo?
No, not at all.
Not that one. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, this looks like if you saw it, you might say it looks like a Les Paul, but it's a hollow body.
Okay.
I saw Jason Isbell playing one, and I thought it looked cool and sounded cool, and then you start looking, and then you start getting your inbox comes in, and pretty soon I can't go to Guitar Center.
I switched my gear collecting from, first it was windsurfing, so I have like lots of boards, then it was guitars, and now it's bikes.
Yeah. Well, I have as many bikes as I have guitars, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
So there's a joke with my cycling friends. They say, how many bikes do you need? It's how many bikes do you have plus one, It
depends on what, you have a bike for all occasions.
Yeah.
Like you have running shoes you have running shoes for your daily training, you have running shoes for race day, right?
I have a guitar that I'm playing in this band. If I'm playing outside and I think it's going to rain, I play that guitar.
Yeah.
Everything. So different styles.
All right, what bikes do you have?
So the bike that I ride the most is, I'm really proud of it because my wife and I bought these bikes back in the 90s. And so the old giant ATX 760, remember that bike? It sat in my garage for a really long time. And then that was during the pandemic, I think it was. I got into this idea of the gravel bike.
I was going to say, I thought it was a hybrid. Yeah.
So I took a mountain bike and I turned it into a gravel bike, but I used it as my main commuting bike. So I changed the gear ratio. I put a touring crank on the front. So it rides fast. Mountain bikes are slow on the road.
Right.
This bike is fast. It rides really well. And it's set up like a gravel bike, so it's got bar end shifters and it's got those wood chipper handlebars. It's a pretty cool looking bike, but it's vintage looking. I use the slime in the tubes so I don't get flats and everything like that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
So you're tubeless?
No, it's a tube. You put this junk in this green, it looks like green slime, and you put it in there and you can run over a nail.
Yeah, and it just explodes and fills up the hole.
Yeah. So
awesome. And what shoes do you run in? Back to running, because if we talk about cycling and guitars, I know you have to get back to your booth.
Well, the shoes that I'm running in now are Asics, but I worked in a running shop when I was doing my PhD, and so I've run in absolutely every shoe that's imaginable. But I will say this, and I say it with the most graciousness of my heart. The reason why I run in Asics is I get Asics shoes for free. Asics is our main sponsor of our event, and they set every race that we do, I get a new pair of Asics shoes. And they give us the good ones. So
which ones are you running in, though?
So
which ones do you
I have the Nimbus, I have the Cumulus. I've got the Nova Blast. I think I like the Nova Blast the most.
Have you tried the Metaspeed Paris?
I have not. I have not tried that one yet. Yeah.
You got to dial into those.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this has been super fun,
Yeah,
Doug. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to seeing you when is the race?
The race is the Flyingpigmarathon, for everybody listening out there, come to Cincinnati. The Flyingpigmarathon is always the first weekend in May. So in 2025, it's going to be the 2nd through the 4th. Cincinnati's a beautiful place to stay. You can come get to downtown Cincinnati from the airport and you don't have to drive anywhere. The hotels, the restaurants, the bars, the post-race party, the start, the finish is all walking distance.
WKRP in Cincinnati. I love doing that.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not putting that on here. But that was the best show ever.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
Thank you. That was really great. Thanks for being on.
Sure, no problem.